Howdy, folks, and welcome to the Hunting Stories podcast. I'm your host, Michael, and we got a great one for you today. Today, we're actually connecting with Johnny Mack. If you don't know Johnny, he is he's the host of Soul Seekers. It's a podcast and a TV show, and he's a great guy. He's a newer hunter like myself, and actually, this is a unique episode as it's probably the first one that I've ever had where I had actually heard the story before. I heard Johnny telling the story on Jim Huntsman's podcast, The Western Huntsman, and I was like, that's crazy. I love it. I got to get him on this podcast. And of course, Johnny was happy to oblige and go into a sort of a greater level of detail than he did at Jim's podcast. So, Johnny, thank you very much for jumping on. I really do appreciate it. To all you listeners, thank you guys for tuning in. Now let's go ahead and jump into this thing and let Johnny tell you his stories. All right, Johnny. Welcome to the Hunting Stories podcast, man. How are you?
Dude, I'm doing well. How are you doing, brother?
I am doing real well. It's a great start to a Friday talking to you. I can't complain.
Oh, man. Nothing like kicking off the weekend on the right foot. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Let's go.
Absolutely. And you were introduced by one of the best, right? Jim Huntsman. So I found out that everyone's either by themselves or I start these long trains of people where people keep introducing me. So I'm excited to hear who you introduced me to because you were introduced by Jim Huntsman, who I think is one of the best podcasters out there. So, that's actually part of the reason that I had you on this podcast. I heard you on his podcast and you told one of the best stories I've ever heard. And I just love that story. So it's going to be a unique episode because this is probably the first time that I'm going to ask someone to tell a story that I actually already know.
Yeah.
So I hope you're okay with that. But that being said, let's take a small step back. Let you introduce yourself because I'm sure I have plenty of listeners that don't know who Johnny Mack is. So Johnny, introduce yourself.
Oh, brother, I appreciate it. Man. Well, first off, I'll say, hopefully I'll give you a better version of that story. On Jim's podcast, I was like, all right, I'm going to fit this into our overall talk that we were giving. So I'll be able to spice it up a little bit more for you. But
oh, perfect.
Yeah. So I'm Johnny Mack. I am a husband to a beautiful wife. This is going to be 10-year anniversary here, June 22nd. Super excited about that. And the father to 3 boys. And I got 8, 6, and going to be 4. And I was a school teacher for 16 years and still am currently doing education, but also a mortgage loan officer. And I'm the host of the Soul Seekers podcast and TV show on Carbon TV. And just a free American is what I am as well.
Go, man. There you go. And a recent convert to Texas like myself, right?
That's right. I had to escape the grip of the oppression of the Northwest, left the state of Washington for sunnier days down in the great state of Texas. And so I don't know if I
told you this, Johnny, but I did that too. I actually lived in Seattle for 5 years. What part of Washington were you in? Yeah.
So I was an hour north of Seattle. I lived in a little town called Snohomish and taught in Mukilteo, where Boeing headquarters are.
Isn't that where they have the casinos up there too, right?
They do have some casinos up there as well. Yeah.
Yeah. My wife and I were there and we were like, the water's great, but 9 months out of the year, you can't see the sun. So we got to get back to sunny Colorado. We did that for a bit. And then the job brought us here to Texas. But
oh man, I tell you, laying outside and soaking up that sun, taking the shoes off and putting it on the bare ground, grounding yourself. Do you know much about grounding?
I don't know anything about grounding, but I'm a big fan of walking around barefoot. So maybe instinctively I know a little bit, but fill me in. I'm happy to hear about it.
I mean, listen, I'm not it's kind of woo-woo-ish, woo,
yeah.
But at the same time, I'm a believer that we are indoctrinated and lied to so much in mainstream society that I'm willing to experience more of the fringe things to see what is actually helpful and healthy and produces a better life. And one of those things is connecting with nature, which ironically is why I do hunting and all that and clearing my soul and mind and connecting with the earth and my creator. So grounding the whole concept. There's actually a documentary on Netflix about it. I can't remember the name of it. Totally recommend it though. But the concept is that we live in a insulated world, right? Rubber shoes, foam insulation, synthetic clothes, all this stuff that is not allowing the transfer of energy that naturally flows in nature. And so a part of that is to remove your shoes, touch it, like full on. I'm a hunter and a tree hugger at the same time. And this is the ironic, this is going to tie into the story that I'm going to share later, because it's all connected. I see the full on connection of like everything's living, right? The currency, the transfer of energy flow from one hot to cold, positive to negative, like that's all connected in our universe. And so to connect with the earth by taking off your shoes and de-staticking yourself, right? There's a lot of energy that they say a lot of sicknesses derive from pent up energy, right? Like I'm stressed. And so we in human nature, one of the ways we de-stress is to exercise and exert that energy, or we meditate, or we read, or we do something that calms us to allow the energy to flow out of us. And one of those ways is to ground and allow it to just flow in nature. So
yeah, that's interesting. I'm not a hippie, and I'm not, woo woo or whatever you said there, but I will say that like I've always been a barefoot walker. Like if I'm at home, I never have shoes on. I'm walking around the yard, and I'm not excited for sticker burr season in Texas because I think that's going to put a point to my walking barefoot. But when I started hunting, I had none of that crossed my mind. But then after coming back from my first couple trips and having that solitude, the connection with nature, I'd always be like, one of my favorite parts is just like how it like refreshes me, just being out there.
Totally.
And also, like I said about being barefoot, totally. I don't think there's ever been a day in the woods where I haven't taken my boots off and walked around for a little bit, just because I'm like, first off, boots are not that comfortable. And I just love walking around in the mountain grass. So.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So that's the thing about hunting is like, how often do you just sit on the dirt? Right? Yeah. How often are your hands on the dirt for people that work in offices or work in a concrete jungle or whatever they're doing? And all of a sudden they're like, man, why do I always feel better when I come back from hunts and nature? It's like, well, because you're grounding yourself. So
maybe. Well, that's very interesting, Johnny, but it's not why we're here. That's for somebody else's podcast. So let's jump into your story, man. Why don't you set the stage for everyone? I'm excited to hear the gritty details of this story because it's a great one.
Dude, you're
Unless
hilarious.
You want to start with a different story, and then that's your call. You do whatever you want, man.
All right, so here's a little background on myself, a little bit more. So I just turned 39 like a week ago or so, 2 weeks ago.
Happy belated.
And thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Yeah, I'll get you a gift someday here. I promise.
Heck yeah. Maybe I'll return the favor and get you on a hog hunt. Get you your actual first hog.
If you want hogs to show up, then I'm there. Because that's what I do.
You're like bringing bananas on a fishing trip, right? Like fish are caught. All right, so
I'm more of turkeys show up wherever I go, but hogs, nope. So if you have trouble calling turkeys in, then bring me along. But
I do. So so I got to connect. All right, so here's the story: is I've always been a hunter. I was a high school football coach for multiple years. Was supposed to be the head football coach. Ironically, when I met my wife, I proposed two months after meeting her, and we got married within 5 months of knowing each other.
Wow.
And I told her, I was like, hey, babe, listen, I want to get married to you. However, the caveat, the asterisk, I go, you're going to be a football widow, because my plan is to be a head football coach. And it was right there on the horizon. It was already kind of lined up. So I just understand that if you're going to join me on this journey and we're going to join our lives together, like, you're going to be alone a lot in the fall. And I said it out there, and maybe it's selfish, maybe whatever, but that was the agreement going into our marriage. And so she signed up for being a football widow and understanding the football life where, Monday through Friday practice, Friday night games, Saturday workouts, and breaking down film and all that. So this was in 2013. So we are in 2023, so 10 years ago. And about that time in my life, I used to work at REI. REI is Recreational Equipment Incorporated. It's an outdoor store, really known for more like that liberal mentality, granola, tree huggerish type, Chaco sandal.
No rifle
wearing,
department.
No, they don't have a gun department. So I used to do everything. I was a former PE teacher. So like if it was active, I did it. I played college football. I played college lacrosse. I'm just doing everything: mountain biking, rock climbing, snowboarding, like backpacking, getting after it, living an active and fulfilling life. But there's always been a call upon my soul. And that call was to be a hunter. I used to watch the movies like, you remember the movie Shane, the old country western?
Man, it rings a bell, but I'm not placing it.
Well, I used to watch these old country western movies and be like, man, that guy's so brave. He's so courageous. Look at him, like kind of like Lone Ranger style, up on his horse, living his life, pursuing the wild and just getting after it. And here I was a little bit of a scared little boy growing up, timid. The household that I was raised in was a little tumultuous and confusing at times. And so I found my identity of being whatever made other people happy. So I was, pursuing football at the time because that was what my father did. And I was like, all right, well, I guess this is what I'm going to do. And I'm going to be a football coach. And it was familiar, but I always had this call upon my soul to be a hunter, to go out and challenge myself, challenge grit, determination, provide all of these different things. So it was in 2013, I was like, you know what? For the very first time in my life, and I do mean the very first time in my life, I chose me. And I said, I am going to learn how to hunt. And I decided to take my hunter safety course. So at 30 years old, I passed my hunter safety course. I'm coaching high school football, middle school basketball, and track, and just trying to squeeze in learning how to hunt, starting a family, and going on this adventure. And what I learned as an adult, I was like, dude, this is really hard. I didn't realize the concept of public lands. Here I was working at REI, backpacking the Pacific Crest Trail all over, like miles and miles of wilderness. And I didn't understand that the same trails that I was hiking, I could carry a weapon on. And because it's not taught. So who are you going to learn that from if it's not taught within the lineage of your grandpa, uncle, father, parents? It's like, no, you can go take animals off this landscape and bring it home and eat it.
I never, I have a very similar background here. Like I started the same time, did tons of hiking. Like that's all my wife and I did was hiking camp and those kind of things. And I never had the slightest concept of public land. It was just like, hey, let's go to this trail. You're allowed to hike the trail. That's all I knew. Like I didn't know anything else. It's very interesting. I never thought about it that way, man. But continue. I interrupted.
Yeah. So here I am being a school teacher and understanding what is taught to humans and people in our youth and what is not taught. Right. And this is where we can go all rabbit hole-y and conspiracy theory and all this, like the indoctrination of like, we're setting up our youth to fail. We're setting them up to be little drone worker bees rather than to be creative minds and, be creating something for this world to better themselves so that they're not a slave to the system. So here I was finally making a choice for myself that I wanted to hunt. I didn't understand public lands. Even at REI, when I worked there, the main thing was, oh, what adventure are you going on next? What adventure are you going on next? And I used to sell backpacks. I fit people for backpacks. I had a lot of experience. Like that was so much fun, but there was something missing.
Yeah.
I love being an observer of nature. And that is what backpacking is. Stay on your trail, leave no trace, like don't color outside the lines. But when I became a part, but when I became a participant in nature, my world was transformed, absolutely transformed. So I went on this hunting journey, but I was trying to, find time to shoot a deer. Like everyone's first animal, when I talk to new hunters, like, oh, what do you want to hunt? They're like, oh, I really want to shoot a deer or an elk, right? Yeah. They want antlered animals. So I was like, okay, I want to hunt, period. I'm Second Amendment before anything else. Like, give me the Second Amendment even before public lands as far as a stance, because then I still have the right to be able to, defend and protect and provide. And I love public lands and I support them, but I like to support the initial first. So here I was shooting paper and maybe shooting steel, but at the end of the day, I was like, I need something more. I want something more. And so I picked up coyote hunting. And I was like, okay, it's open year round. It doesn't compete with football and all these other sports that I'm doing and coaching. So I went out on this journey to be a coyote hunter. I was buying books, reading all sorts of material. And I was like, this is really hard. hunting Western Washington timber for coyotes and not having a lot of like ranch land or farmland owners that I could go knock on their door. And I wasn't a very good advocate for myself. That's one thing I want to say is like, create the life that you want to create. If you want land to hunt, then go find land, go knock on doors and all that. So let's just say I'm not the very best coyote hunter, but it got me into it. And so at that point, I was like, okay, well, what big game animals can I hunt? What big game animals can I hunt? And I started to look through the regulations for the state of Washington, which, by the way, reading game regulations is like reading a college manual for signing up for courses, right?
Yeah, and every state is so different.
Yes. I was just talking to Tom Ryle, who works for the Department of Fish and Wildlife in the state of Washington. He was like, hey, what's something that we can do for new hunters? I was like, explain how to understand the point system, right?
Yeah.
Like you can apply for this, but if you apply for this, you can't apply for that one. And just what weapon are you going to use? And all is so convoluted, right? In college, we have people that are there to help us and walk us through understanding, whether it's a student who's already done it or counselors. They're like, okay, these are the courses that you're going to want to do. What is your goal? What are you working towards? And we break it down. And so this mentorship aspect is totally missing at times within hunting. And that's a part of the story that we're going to get to of why I'm doing everything that I'm doing currently. So here I am learning, and I dive through these regulations and I'm like, oh, wild. Black bear season opens up August 1st. August 1st, the first 2 weeks of August were always the 2 weeks that I would always go backpacking. Whether it was spending a week circumferencing Mount Rainier and the Wonderland Trail or just spending time in the woods, those were my times to go out and be active prior to football starting. Football started August 16th, and I had 2 weeks to just go. So I was like, well, I'm really scared of bears. I had some traumatic when I was in second and third grade backpacking out in the wilderness. I had some people pretend to be bears outside my tent. And I lived this scared little boy life, right? Not a very courageous human being,
Yeah.
brave human being. And that's something that I've grown into and a muscle that I've flexed and worked out in my life. But so I was scared of bears, but I was like, I really want to hunt. Okay, I guess I'm a bear hunter before anything else, because deer and elk season competed with football and I didn't understand special permits. So late season hunts didn't really make sense to me and all this. And I was like, all right, well, here we go. And so I would, go out hunting as best I could, trying to figure out what was going on. And I'd come back and the wife be like, oh, did you get anything? No. Did you see anything? No. And this continued on year after year. So in 2013, I got my hunter safety. And in 2016, I believe, one of your guests, I think episode 2 or 3, Douglas Bose.
Yeah, Doug.
So I went to school with his wife.
Oh, no way.
Yep. And so through hunting forums, you kind of figure out who's who and different things like that. And I was using as many resources as I could. And I was like, I messaged Doug. I was like, Doug, can I sit down for breakfast with you? Because I don't understand anything and I'm really having a hard time.
Did you get his book?
Consider. I do have his book. Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
Yes.
That's a great
Yeah.
book. But okay,
Yeah.
continue. Doug is
So
just great.
Doug's awesome. Ultimate Guide to Black Bear Hunting. Super cool dude.
Yeah.
So I sat down for breakfast with him. Had my oldest kid at the time was a little baby sitting in like a car carrier, and I was like, dude, I need to learn how to bear hunt. At this time in my life, I was like, can you take me? Will you take me? Like, like because there's a lot to be said about reading things and then applying it, but visually seeing how things work and then copying it and applying it to your own really, really opens the door for me. Especially like being a school teacher, I understand the different models of learning, right?
Yeah. Yep.
People learn in different ways. I'm a visual learner, so I can mimic things very well, and allows me to have a deeper understanding of knowledge. So I sit down for breakfast with them and have a good time. End up leaving. I did not go hunting with him. I have yet to hunt with Douglas bows. I ironically talked to him about it. I was like, hey, I actually want you to come on my show. Let's film a hunt and let's go knock it out of the park together. Maybe that'll happen. And if Doug listens to this podcast, love your brother. You're awesome. So here I am. I'm like, okay, that was cool. I still don't feel confident in what I'm doing. So, but he did, the whole find the bears, find the berries, find the berries, find the bears, like get the food resources. And I'm like, all right, what do berry bushes look like? Besides in Western Washington, Himalaya blackberry bushes are everywhere, right?
Everywhere.
Like big briar patches. But the issue is
bushes too.
Right. But you can't see into them. Like, you can't glass on a knob and look into a berry patch. The bears might be in there, but the terrain doesn't lend itself to that style of hunting as well. So I started hiking, and as I was hiking, I was like, oh, these are berry bushes in August. And I started to really understand huckleberry bushes, blueberry bushes. And what helped me is getting off trail, because a lot of the times you're not going to find those berries on the trail as much because the backpackers or hikers are going through there. And so you don't recognize. But the minute that I became a hunter and I started coloring outside the lines and being a participant in nature, all of a sudden my eyes opened up and the veil was lifted. And I was like, oh, I understand now. So I was at the time, I wasn't very confident and comfortable hunting by myself, especially backpacking. I don't like doing things by myself that much. I don't know if it is, I'm a very social creature.
Yeah.
But I was also lacking courage at the time as well in my life. So
that all speaks to me.
Right. So to pursue an animal that I was already kind of afraid to hunt, and do it solo, I was like, I don't think I'm ready for that yet. So I didn't know anyone who hunted. I didn't have, father, these people that would lineage and pass down this knowledge and skill set to me. And so I had a good buddy, Tony Ellersick. Shout out to my hunting partner, Tony. I was like, dude, you want to learn how to hunt with me? And he was like, yeah, sure. He's a brewmaster or a former brewmaster at his family's brew pub in Washington. And I was like, dude, here's your link. Take the class in between brewing batches and just like go through it on your phone and all that. So he knocks out hunter safety. And I'm like, all right, I got a plan. We're going to go on a backpack trip. Only we're going to bring rifles and we're going to go kill a bear. So we set off. And I recruited one other guy with me at that time. But we set off 9 miles into the backcountry of the state of Washington. And a lot of people are like, why would you go 9 miles for a bear hunt? It's like, because that's where I thought bears were at, right? Like, I'm doing my best here, people. Lay off me. I was also training for a marathon at the time and like fit and active, and 9 miles to me wasn't that much. And I used to love to backpack. So like 15-mile days was not uncommon when you're just traveling point A to point B. So we pack all the way into the backcountry, and we get there just beat down, tired, but it's like, okay, we're here for a purpose, so let's go glass. So we get up there, we glass up a bear for the very first time,
All
right
right.
as sun is going down. It's like, holy smokes, we're doing it. This is like, we saw something.
That's a
So
big
sun
victory for
goes,
someone who hadn't seen anything. Yeah, I know
dude,
that. I know that feel.
huge victory. Like, oh my gosh, I'm not just a hiker with a gun now. Like, okay, I'm getting closer to that point. But the bear was like 1,000 yards away, across a drainage, impossible to get to. Sun was going down. And we're like, okay, well, we're somewhat in the right location. It was a south facing slope, sun was out. We're looking for things that are painting this picture for how to find bears. So we go to bed that night, and we wake up, and we're like, okay, we're going to go glass, and we're figuring this out. So we go, we have coffee, we're glassing, we're not seeing anything. Maybe because our eyes aren't really set to be that good. I don't know. Like, you got to train your eyes to understand seeing things that you're not used to seeing.
Yeah.
For me, like, I don't know if you get a lot of new hunters listening to your show or not, but I like to tell a little short side story here about trusting your own eyes. And so we look at something, we see a picture, but when there is something that stands out, we need to trust our gut, trust our instinct. This is a big part of being a hunter, like learning to get in alignment and trust yourself and have instincts. So you look at a hill, you're like, oh, that just stands out differently. Maybe it's just a slightest color, slightest movement, whatever. You hone in on it. Well, I was a homeowner, and I was in the garage one night dinking around, and I was about to walk back in my house, and out of the corner of my eye, I saw the quickest, faintest little flash. Not a flash of light, but a movement. Like what was that? And I looked over, I didn't see anything. And I was like, oh, weird. We us as humans, we brush things off so often, like, oh, that was nothing. Like,
Yeah.
And so I start to walk into my house, and all of a sudden I stopped and I said, no, you saw something. Listen to your instincts. Go back. So I went and got a mouse trap, and I stuck it in the corner of my garage. And no less than 2 hours later, I trapped a mouse in my garage. The point of that story is to actually, like, your body, your brain is so much more powerful than you realize. You got to listen to it. You got to tune out other things and focus on what you're doing. And more often than not, you're going to be correct. So we're glassing.
Yeah, for sure.
Oh, sorry. Feel free to hop in at all.
No, I was just you're absolutely right. Like, trust your gut, and you're going to glass up an occasional stump or rock, and you're going to stare at it for 5 minutes. But then occasionally you'll find that critter. Like, often I can't tell the difference between those things until you're just like, no, it is something. It's not a stump this time.
Right. It moved. And by the way, if I'm monologuing too much, I apologize. So
no, that's the whole point here.
We're
just hearing your stories, man. This is all we want. So you're doing great.
So I'm 9 miles in the backcountry, figuring it out. We saw a bear. We're motivated because we saw a bear. Like, if we leave this hunt, we saw a bear. Okay. We were dedicating
progress,
a few days to it. So that morning we're hiking, and let me back up here and digress for a second. Learning how to hunt, it's always get away from people. Get away from people. Hey, if you want to find animals, you got to get away from people. So I thought in my head, 9 miles, that should be enough to get away from people. Well, we're glassing. It's probably about 10 in the morning, and all of a sudden, ruff, 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 ruff. And I'm like, is that a dog barking? We're 9 miles in the backcountry. No way. Sure enough, a yoga instructor and her 2 male students from downtown Seattle and their dog roll up the exact same trail. Excuse me. that we hiked in to hunt bear. And I am like, my gut just sank at that point. I was like, no way. We came all the way out here to find bears and be alone, and you guys are gonna bring your dog barking? Like, we're gonna scare off every animal in this canyon, in this drainage, and like, get out of here. Our hunt's blown. Give me a break. So I'm frustrated, and it's August, and it is during a heat wave in the state of Washington. And so we glass all day. We don't see anything. I don't know if it was the dog. I don't know if it was because we were not glassing well or diligently enough or whatever. But I'm a little irritated. I'm like, okay, how long are these people going to be here? Well, when I looked at them, I realized like, you guys don't have big backpacks on. That was a long. They ended up coming in just for a day hike. They hiked 9 miles all the way in for a day hike to see where we were. And I was like, geez Louise, 18 miles? Like, okay, I got some respect for you right there.
That's a good day.
So this is my first encounter with other people as a hunter. So we're cooling off and we're cooling ourselves off in the water. We're about to do dinner and have dinner and get ready for the evening hunt. The dog is splashing in the water. There's being loud. They're kind of keeping their distance from us, but at the same time, I already feel invaded upon by these day hikers. And eventually they come over and we, my buddies are in camo. I'm in camo, and I'm like, so you guys are just here for a day hike, huh? And they're like, oh yeah, I've never been here before. Man, this is quite a hike. And I'm thinking, yeah, this is quite a hike.
Yeah, you're halfway done.
So you're like, oh, why are you wearing camouflage? I was like, we're hunting. She's like, you're hunting? Like looking all bewildered. I was like, yeah, we're hunting. She goes, what are you hunting? I go, black bears. She goes, oh, you can hunt bears? Like I didn't know that was an animal you could hunt. So here I am, just full front educating non-hunters right here. My very first time being an ambassador for hunting. And I'm just giving this lady an education. She's like, I didn't know you could hunt bears. Wait, she goes, wait, there's bears around here? And I'm like, well, hopefully, I don't know. I mean, we saw one yesterday, but now your dog's barking and everything.
Yeah, bears hate dogs, but yeah.
Like, I don't know if there's bears around here anymore. And so, you're always cautious around people who are non-hunters, or I feel like people could be, because either they want to paint it in a good light or they don't want to get hated on, or just like, oh, well, I'm going to scare every bear off in this country. Just yelling like you're walking with ginger steps to just make sure everything's okay.
Yeah, there's reason there's hunter harassment laws, right? Because you're worried that people are just going to go bonkers and ruin your hunt or come after you or whatever. You never know. So there's reason those laws are in place because it's happened enough times.
Totally. So I'm like, well, what do you do? What's your story? She's like, oh, I'm a yoga instructor from Seattle, and those are my 2 students, and they're both males. She's a female. I'm like, I mean, I don't know what type of nature adventures they were going on, but
yeah.
Maybe they were looking to ground themselves all together at the same time.
Let the energy flow, my man. Let the energy flow.
Where attention goes, energy flows. But that's neither here nor there. That's not my point to say. So she's like, okay, well, we're going to be leaving here pretty soon. And I'm like, oh, God, thank God. Like, scram, beat it, skedaddle, get out of here. Like, this was our spot. With you. Right? And all of a sudden, and now granted, I also thought the spot was completely blown out. Like her dogs are barking, they're throwing sticks and, like causing a ruckus. Well, I'm about to boil some water. I'm wearing Birkenstocks at the time. Everyone has camp shoes. A lot of people love Crocs in the hunting world. I hunt with Birkenstocks. And, maybe it's my tie to working at REI and the granola guy in me, but I just love the Jesus sandals, bro. They're, they're awesome. So I'm sitting there in some shorts, my Birkenstocks. My other buddies, I think they got their camo on already. I think I had a camo top on. It was like the only shirt I brought. And all of a sudden, she's like, "Bear!" And I'm like, no freaking way. This is the hunter harassment we were talking about. Like, she's yelling now. She's joking with us. Uh, and I'm like, get out of here. Like, seriously, scram. And so my other hunting partners that were there at the time, they're like, what? And she's pointing. And I'm like, whatever, dude. She's totally pulling our chain. So they quickly grab their guns and like run, and they just like take off. I don't believe her. I'm like, this lady is just playing with us. So I grab my binoculars, I got my sandals on, and I take my shorts. I take my time. I take my time. Just I walk up to her. I'm like, ma'am, did you actually see a bear? And you could see like her face was ghost white. Her pupils were huge, and it was like, and I go, where was it? And she, without saying anything, she's like nodding yes at the same time as reaching her hand out. And she points no further than about 100 yards away from us, across the water at this area. And I look, I don't see anything. And I'm like, is she playing? Are you playing with me? Did you really see a bear? She goes, yeah, I saw a bear. And I go, well, which way did it go? She goes, it went that way. And I said, all right. So I take off in my Birkenstocks. And when I say take off, it's like a light ginger jog, right? Like I'm kind of hustling to find my hunting partners, but I don't have a gun. So I'm not planning on shooting anything. She's been loud, her dog's loud. I don't really believe that there was a bear 100 yards away. Well, catch up to my buddies on the trail, and they're just standing there looking, and they're about maybe 100 yards from where she spotted the bear. So they're probably about 50 yards away from the area in which the bear was supposedly last seen. So we're standing there, and I'm behind them, and they're looking. And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, which is classic for black bears, right? It's like when I give my bear hunting seminars, I talk about fish on a pond. We go fishing a lot of the times, not because we see fish, but because we just know and believe that there are fish under the water. And then they jump up and out of the water. And you're like, there are fish here. Let's go do it. So that's what black bear hunting's like. They walk on all fours low, and then all of a sudden they pop out of these bushes or on logs, and you can see them. And I'm like, the bear's right there. The bear's right there. Like, shoot it. And my one buddy, he's like, I don't see it. And the other, Tony, he's like, where? I'm pointing over his shoulder, like my arms resting on his shoulder, like right there. Are you kidding me? And, we're already being slightly loud, and this bear heard her scream, like, bear, back at the water. And so my hunting partner, dude, Tony, everyone, if you don't have an awesome hunting partner, then time to reevaluate, because a good hunting partner is worth their salt and weight in gold. Like, yep. Phenomenal. So he goes, here, take my rifle. And he hands me his gun. And I check to make sure it's chambered, and I slam that a bolt and battery, and I just take off running. I'm pretty sure I've set two
with your gun.
Yes, I've set 2 world records. One for the fastest person ever to move in Birkenstocks.
Yeah.
And so I'll get to the next one here in a second. So I run about what I would assume is about 200 yards. 250 yards on a rocky, broken trail. I have to cross a creek, uphill, downhill, all these things. And then all of a sudden, I just felt the sense to stop. And I stepped off the trail a couple steps. And The woods are quiet. The woods are quiet. And out of nowhere, black bear pops out at 30 yards and stares me right in the eyes.
Jeez.
And at that moment, my soul like looked into its soul and we locked eyes. And I will say this, I could see the fear in that bear's eyes.
I bet.
And how that speaks for hunting is like, you know, we all want to live. We all want to have the best life possible. But the interesting thing is, and I'd say but right there is, it was like, I believe in it's meant to be. Like that bear was meant to sacrifice its life to kick off something grander and greater and something beyond just the kill. And so I pull up my gun quickly, and this bear is trying to drop down into a pretty steep creek drainage. Like it's about 6 feet to 10 feet deep down into this little creek drainage.
Got it.
So I shoot as fast as I can. Bam. And I just stand there. I'm like, oh my gosh, did I get it? Did I get it? And all of a sudden, and that's not a very good impression right there, but
I've
but
heard
I
of the death
heard
moan of a bear. I've never heard it.
Oh, it's like you will not forget it when you hear it.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden, this bear death moans right in front of me. I can't see it because it fell down deep into the ditch. But I'm like, holy smokes, I'm pretty sure that's a death moan. Like I've read about this, I've heard about this, but I just experienced it. And I turn around and Tony is on my back, like hands on my shoulders, like, you did it, you freaking shot a bear, you freaking shot a bear. And he hugs me and squeezes me, like, I'm so proud of you. And I'm just like, in this moment, time stood still. Like, I don't know how long it took me from spotting the bear to him handing me the gun to me sprinting as fast as I could in my Birkenstocks to all of a sudden seeing that bear and the universe stopped. To shouldering that gun, squeezing off a round, hearing the death moan, like it was like a movie, right? Like,
yeah,
like Matrix style, where Neo dodges the bullets. It's everything slowed down. It's surreal. Words can't describe like all the emotions that I've been putting in. So just to back up here, 2013 is when I took my hunter safety. This was in 2017 that I killed this black bear. So it was 4 years of not seeing an animal or shooting at an animal. Of like, is this going to be my time? Is this going to be my time? And Tony's on my back. Now, I was so tunnel visioned, I thought I was all by myself, but I love hearing his story, his perspective. He's like, dude, I was right on your heels the entire time. I'm like, yeah, because you had boots on and I was running in sandals. So we shoot this bear, and all of a sudden I realized, I was like, dude, we just shot this bear more or less in front of a yoga instructor and 2 male students from Seattle and her dog. And all of a sudden I'm like, geez Louise. So I peer over the edge. I see that the bear's still laying there. And I'm like, okay, I'm not going down in there yet. And so all of a sudden, off in the distance, is it safe? Is it safe to come up there? And so the yoga instructor and her 2 students shouted out, like, are we good to come back? And it was like, yeah, the bear's dead. You're good. Come on up here. And so no less than did I not spot the very first animal I shot and killed, but a non-hunter did it. And I shot that animal in front of the non-hunter.
Man,
and
that could have gone
would,
so many ways. It turned out pretty well for you, but that went
right. So many ways. And so she comes up along with her other 2 companions, and they're like, you weren't kidding, there's bears in the woods. like this, like for real. I'm like, yeah,
Yeah.
we are here for a reason, but she's like, can I look at it? I was like, well, it's down there in the creek drainage. And she peers over the edge, and she was like fascinated. I think if I could find her today, we never shared contact or
Oh, that's a
information.
shame.
If I could find her today, I bet she would be interested in hunting
Okay.
because of that story. And that lends itself into being an ambassador for hunting, because when we are doing things right, it's inspiring to people, right?
Absolutely. Quick question. Did you talk to her at all about like your plans with the animal as far as like eating it or things like that? Where she's like, people eat bear? Like, was that part of the conversation you had with her?
Totally. Then that actually, I apologize for leaving that out. That was back in the whole you're wearing camo. Oh, you're hunting bear. Oh, you can eat bear. And at this point, I've never had bear. I don't think I've ever even had deer at that point, because
Yeah.
I was a new hunter, didn't have anyone who was giving me meat. And I was like, well, yeah, I hear you can eat bear. So, but I don't tell her like that. It's like, oh, yeah, bear meat's delicious. It's great. And you can do this with the fat and yada yada, just repeating all the talking points that I've read in books or online
Yeah.
or magazines or whatnot. So she sees this and she's like, well, what are you gonna do with this? Like, well, we're gonna cut it up, we're gonna gut it, we're gonna cut it up, and we're gonna hike it out of here. And she's like, wow, that is so impressive. That's incredible. So we end up getting it out of the ditch, and one of her students did not even want to look at the bear. Like you could tell, like I would say he was more of the full on anti-hunter, where I can't believe I just in theory partook in this situation. The other
Yeah.
student was pretty fascinated. He didn't want to touch it, but he definitely wanted to look at it. And so they were just freaked out of their minds. And I think I lit a fire in the yoga instructor for hunting. And so they go on their merry way. And the story doesn't end here. This is, everyone, you come out of the woods, there's always a lesson to be learned, always a lesson to be learned. And so we quarter up the bear. We hang it in game bags. I wanted the rug. I want the skull. I want it all, because this is just such a magical moment. Well, my other two hunting partners at the time, they both had bear tags still. And the truck was 9 miles away, and so was cell service. And this is before inReaches, right? Where you're sending a
Yeah.
message from the mountain to the wife, like, hey, I got one, and all that. And so I was like, well, you guys want to pack out to the truck with me and help me carry this bear out? And they're like, no, we want to keep hunting. Like, obviously, there's bears here. And I'm like, oh. So at this point, I'm like, I don't really want to hike by myself. Number one, I'm still working on that courage. And leading up to this hunt, like I was hanging my food in trees. Now we're not in grizzly country by any means, but that's how scared I was of bears in the woods, where I'm hanging the food in the trees because that's what we do as backpackers, but that's the whole idea, to keep the bears away. And I'm like, no, 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 wait. No, I want a bear to come into camp. That would make it way easier. Like that, like that's a shorter shot, you know. But here I was scared, like full on fear just captured me. And at that moment, I got to lay the hands on the bear that I shot. Like, like electricity through my body just, and something changed inside of me. It
Yeah.
transformed me, and I was like, wow, you know, I'm not as scared as of bears at that point, and I'm progressing and I'm growing and something's happening. But these hunting partners of mine, they're like, no, we want to keep hunting. We don't want to waste a day of, because 9 miles out, but then 9 miles back in.
It's a long
To,
day.
right. That's a
Especially with
long.
meat on your back.
So I'm like, okay, well, I'm a man. I can do this. Little did I know, I was backpacking with like your standard ultralight backpack,
Oh
not
no.
not a hunting pack.
Yep.
And so I didn't understand the importance of meat shelves and the ability to compress heavy weight all along the frame of the backpack. So I put all the meat in, bone in. I put the entire bear cape in, and everything just falls straight to a big ball at the bottom of my bag. I've done a lot of hard things in my life. I've run ultras. I've gone through a lot of like mentally challenging things. And I will tell you to this day, packing out that entire bear by myself in one trip, 9 miles, is the hardest thing I've ever done.
Did you ever figure out how much weight that was?
I didn't, because I was so new. Plenty enough.
I've made that mistake, but with much lower stakes. I have my hunting pack, and I was like, well, I don't want to use my hunting pack to ruck a little bit because I don't want to put any extra miles into it so I can make sure it's good for hunting. So I took my backpacking backpack and threw 50 pounds in that. And I was like, this sucks. Like, I'd much rather use my frame pack. So I have switched to my frame pack, and I'm like, that's what it's for. And it makes a huge, huge difference. So that's just difference. Like rucking around the neighborhood up and down some hills. But like,
so you can
those lightweight packs, yeah, they're meant to hold a lot of lightweight things, not heavy things. And it's awful.
Yeah. And especially when all that weight's sitting at the bottom rather than spread evenly, like it sits different. Like it makes that 50-pound sandbag feel a lot heavier than 50 pounds.
Yeah. All of a sudden you're walking with like a 90-degree bend just to keep the weight a little flatter on your back. Yeah, it's terrible. I can't imagine. And I imagine your bear had a couple hundred, you're probably carrying 150 pounds out. Like, I do not doubt that's the hardest thing you've ever done. I believe that 100%. Even with a good backpack, that would have been hard.
Yes. So I pack it out, and on my way down the trail, every step is hurting. My back is hurting. My shoulder blades are excruciating. My traps are killing me. And just step. And I get about 2 miles from the trail, and I step on a rock, and I thought I broke my ankle. I step, I takes my foot completely sideways on the trail, and I hit the ground with a full heavy pack. Bam! And talk about yelling in the woods, right? Like, not only is the pack strapped to me, so like getting to my ankles not the easiest, like you can't sit up, but I'm like trapped laying downhill and like trying to like navigate my body on rocks and gravel. And I just laid there and I prayed, and I was like, Lord God, help me. I have to get to this truck because no one is going to come save me right now.
Yeah.
Nobody, like the fact that these people came up that trail was so random, but now
no one, the yoga instructor?
So that was the day prior, like those are the only people up on that trail. Here we are the next morning when I pack out the meat and all that. Like, no one's going to come find me. I have to get up myself. So I find the will and the power to get up, and remind you that every step prior when I had 2 good ankles was hard enough. Now here I am, one ankle down, limping, trudging the rest of this pack out all the way to the truck. And I bawled my eyes out, just crying, like struggling with every step and hurting with every step. I get to the truck, finally get the weight off me, and I sit down in that seat, and I just take the biggest breath and say a prayer, and it's like, oh my gosh, I did it. I did it. Like, I crossed the finish line for the thing in which I set off to do 4 years prior. I became a hunter.
Yeah.
I packed out meat. I have gone through every emotional high, the highest of highs and the lowest of lows, to get this meat in the cooler in the back of this truck. So I drive into town, I get ice, give my wife a phone call. I'm like, babe, I did it. Knowing that I have another 9 mile pack in.
Yeah, and
All
then
the-
back out again, right? You got 18 more miles at a minimum.
right. On what I thought was a broken ankle, but turns out like I've broken my right ankle a minimum 3 times, a left ankle a minimum of 2, but prone to spraining my ankles now because of like how bad they are. Like, okay, well, here we go. And at this point, I'm like, oh man, my marathon better not be ruined. I better not be. Come on. So I head back in, and what I learned is in order to, Donnie Vincent, he says it best when he says to experience extraordinary things, you need to put yourself in extraordinary places. I would not have had the transformation through primal adventure in which hunting provides if it wasn't for that opportunity to challenge my courage, grit, and determination as a human being and to put myself into these circumstances. I've also since from that point talked with my hunting partner, Tony, and he said, I will never let you pack out an animal solo ever again.
I bet. I bet.
Because they ended up hunting and not seeing anything. And they, but I had my life on the line as far as, what if something would have happened? I've heard of people like sitting down on logs and then falling backwards and going downhill and really hurting themselves because they're heavy with the hunting pack. So a lot of different things, but we learned lessons learned, right? Like, how long can meat last in game bags? Well, it can last quite a long time, even if it's 90 plus degrees. Put it in the shade, hang it above a creek, let that wind get to it, and none of it's going to spoil. So that was a quick lesson I learned right away. How to speak to non-hunters, right? Like there's people have their mindset. You're never going to change someone's mind. The only thing that you can do is give them an experience. And then from their experience, they can draw their own conclusion. That's why I'm a firm believer in everyone has opinions. Very few people have perspectives. And with perspectives comes real knowledge and belief structures. So
I like it, man. I like it.
So from this point, I realized there were so many things that I did wrong on this hunt. I would have done better. And how was I supposed to know this? How was I supposed to know that the same land I was hiking, I could hunt? How was I supposed to know, how long meat lasts? How was I supposed to know to pack out an animal with somebody else? Not that you have to, you can pack out solo, but for a new hunter, like an inexperienced, I don't know what I'm doing standpoint. Like there's so many lessons learned that I took it upon myself and I was like, okay, it's time to Field of Dreams. Remember the movie Field of Dreams?
Oh yeah.
If you build it, they will come.
Yep. Ghost baseball players, of course.
Oh yeah. So I took to Instagram and created an Instagram account called Washington Backcountry because I was in the state of Washington and I was hunted in the backcountry. Seems good enough. Well, I was like, how do I build a community of hunters? How do I reach more people and inspire myself? Inspired people inspire other people, and I want to be around that community and connection and all that. So what I didn't tell you at the beginning of the story is I'm actually a DJ also.
Oh, there we go.
So I'm used to public speaking and hosting events and emceeing on microphones and all this. I was like, I'm going to throw my own event. And so I threw my very first community event under the name of Washington Backcountry. And 13 people from all over the state of Washington showed up that just followed a random Instagram account. I only had like 200, 300 followers at the time. And I got to share with them my story and talk to them about my experience and the power of investing into other people. And from there, I started to develop my tagline, my slogan, which is mentorship is conservation. If you want hunting to last for generations to come, then you need to invest in the hearts and lives of other people. Because as much as everyone is like, oh, take a kid fishing, take a kid hunting, this adult who now is a hunter, who now has 3 children of his own, is going to pass on that lineage of hunting, whether or not people hunt or not, but also how they vote and impacts legislation. That's and it impacts things greater than themselves. Well, all starts from challenging somebody and say, hey, why don't you start hunting? You want something more out of life? Why don't you come with me? Kind of like it's my Fisher of Men story. Like if you're a Bible believer, the Jesus story, right? Like love God and love man. Well, mentorship is ultimately just loving somebody, taking your time and investing it into somebody else. That's what mentorship is.
Yeah.
And so from there, I was like, all right, how do I get this mission out? So I started a website, I started doing outdoor writing, started a podcast, and then started a show, all for the story to spread the mission of mentorship is conservation, because hunting has the power to transform lives through primal adventure. And if you have not experienced that for your own self, then it's time for you to go do that. And if you know that experience, that you know that power, you know that excitement, you know that transformation, then just like eating at a restaurant where it's like, oh man, dude, this restaurant was the best. You guys got to try it. We as hunters need to speak about hunting in that regard.
Yeah.
This hunting experience was the best. You guys give it a shot. Try it. You're going to love it. I guarantee it. Do you need help? You need some encouragement. You need some motivation. You need some, I'm here to support you. And from there, that spurted on. So here we are in 2023, and I just launched season 3 of Soul Seekers on Carbon TV, and over 200 plus episodes of the podcast. And
that's crazy, man.
And I'm a bear hunter. I mean, I've killed more bears than I have deer. So
here's the question: how many coyotes have you killed? Because I know that's where it all started.
Not enough, not enough. But I do have you can see a coyote pelt hanging on the wall right here, and I love Euro mounts. So I got coyote skulls all around my house. My kids are like, "Oh, Dad, can I have one for my room?" And
that's cool. That's cool, man. Well, that's a great story, Johnny, man. From top to bottom, it's just as enjoyable the second time, obviously, because I've heard it before. But I wish you had stayed in contact with the yoga instructor, because I guarantee she tells this story more often than you do. Guarantee it.
Probably. Oh yeah. Talk about something you'll never forget in her life, right? Like.
Right? Except her story's like, I got attacked by this bear, and this hunter in Jesus shoes jumped over the cliff and shot the bear and saved my life.
Right. Yeah. So the second world record, for those listeners who I think I didn't actually say it, is I believe I'm probably the first person in the world to ever shoot a bear in Birkenstock sandals. So that's my claim to fame.
I believe it.
Undocumented though. So
I do have one other podcast guest that shot a bear in nothing but his underpants. So he probably has that record too. Yeah, that's Zach Hansen. I don't know if you know Zach at all.
I do. He's been a guest on my podcast as well.
Yeah, man. Awesome, have you heard his story?
Yes. Fascinating.
Yeah. It's so great. So all right, Johnny. Well, I've taken up more time than I asked for, but I'm not going to cut you off. Do you have any more stories you want to tell, or do you need to get to those little younglings? Because you've given me all that I needed. That one story is something I've been waiting for, man.
I appreciate it. No, I'm truly honored to be able to share time with you, brother, and to spend time with you, Michael. You're an amazing human being, and I appreciate the opportunity. I don't know, did your grandfather or your father or ever tell stories like that just captivated you as a kid?
No. Nope.
Okay. But here
I know you're probably trying to go somewhere with me getting a yes on that one, but yeah, my dad was not a hunter. He's not a storyteller. He was in education. Both of my parents were in education. So I have a lot of respect for what you do there. And maybe that's kind of where I'm getting this from. But my father's father, he disappeared when he was born. He was a circus performer. He was, put up some straw in your mouth and he'd whip it out. But he ran off. So I never met my grandpa. On my mother's side, farmer, hunter, but that was never passed on. It never came to me. And he died when I was pretty young, probably when I was like 7. So never really had grandpas telling stories. And definitely not my dad. That's not his style.
Well, that is a fantastic story in itself. I can't wait to hear that one. We'll have to spend some more time, get you on my podcast, have you tell your story of your journey.
Yeah.
The point in which I was going to go there is
that I derailed. Sorry.
No, I mean, let's just say I wasn't prepared for that. I should have set that one up better. Is like this idea of the Iliad and the Odyssey and these grand stories of old that continue to be passed down generation to generation because of how they're told and how they're shared. When we speak for hunting, we need to speak for hunting like it is the greatest thing in the world.
Absolutely.
And these stories are important. So the last thing I'll share real quick is a short anecdote that I experienced a couple of years ago. Living in this neighborhood, and my neighbor was a hunter. And it was my middle son's birthday. He's born October 21st. And so we were having a birthday season. And in the state of Washington, that's during modern rifle season for deer. I'm like, oh man, I want to go hunt, but my kid's birthday. And by the way, guys, don't get your wife pregnant or significant other from the Valentine's Day on. Make sure you understand the calendar.
Yeah, right.
That 9 months, 10 months out from whatever.
Yeah. The best time to get her pregnant is right after hunting season. Or, is that right? I don't know.
Right.
Yeah, my daughter's birthday is October 1st, and my wife let me go hunting while she was basically 9 months pregnant. So I got like a weekend at the beginning of September, and then I had to rush home because, you never know when the baby's going to show up. But I ended up being there for a couple of weeks before the baby showed up, but she's a saint. But continue. Sorry.
Oh man, God bless you. So and your wife. So neighbor comes over to my kid's birthday party, and he's like, "Hey, I shot a deer," and I'm like, "Dude, you shot a deer? Like, tell me about this." Because I love to live vicariously through other people. I want to hear these stories. I love these legends. I love these concepts and journeys and all this. And he goes, "Oh well, I was on this logging road and I was kind of walking and I saw a deer and it was a doe. And then all of a sudden I saw another deer and I picked up my gun and pow." And like, he's full on telling me in this manner. He's like, yeah, I walked up to it and like, now I'm here at your party. And I'm like, that story sucked, dude. like, tell me about your hunt. And at that point, that was when I also like, it really cemented for me. It's like, we need to tell these stories to inspire people.
Yeah.
To motivate them. Because even from a hunter to a hunter is like, okay, I don't care how big your buck was, like you still went out and got it done. Yeah. Like that's a big deal. Yeah. And I'm not one to quantify or qualify the animal in which you chose to take its life, right? If it's a spike, it's a spike. If the doe, it's the antlerless, like you still went out and did your job. That's impressive. So at that point, it's like, dude, we gotta be very careful and diligent about speaking in an excited manner about telling our stories.
I agree 100%, man. My hunting buddy, terrible storyteller. Like, so I've been working with him to like practice a little bit, and he'll start telling a story and then he'll get like 5 or 6 sentences into it and then like get flustered and like, you tell the story. And I'm like, no, man, it's your story. Like you'll get there. Like, I was like, I'll add any points that maybe you missed, but like, you tell your story, bud. So yeah, it's important to speak well, and be excited and all these things about these stories. And that's why I love this. It's like the feedback I've been getting is it's not the people like, oh, like your story of your neighbor. No, I went out there, climbed a mountain, shot a 200-inch mule deer. It's the story about the guy that like had this grand adventure and then missed the shot. And like, that's his story. Because it's like everything that led up to it was just so great. And he remembers it. In fact, more hunters remember the missed shots than they do the like, the 30th buck they've killed.
Oh, totally.
So
I just missed on a bear hunt in Idaho this last weekend.
Yeah, you'll remember that a lot longer than probably some of the kills you've had, I bet.
Probably. It was horrible. Let's just say I couldn't sleep very well a couple nights after that.
I bet. All right, Johnny. Well, I know you got to run, man. Why don't we finish this thing up? Why don't you tell the people where they can find you? And I'll also put links to everything in the show notes, but why don't you let them know?
I appreciate it. So we are on Instagram and Facebook under Soul Seekers Nation. So for you to also carry on that mentorship with conservation, platform, We Are a Nation, and we want to invite you in and have you be a part of what we're doing. So go to soulseekersnation.com. You can go check out a lot of our affiliate discount links that a lot of our partners are gracious enough to share. It's like we want to help encourage people to get started, and saving some money is one of those things that helps. We got an online store. You can check out some swag, but soulseekersnation.com is our website. We're on Instagram. We're on Facebook. We're on Twitter. Not really that active on Twitter that much these days in regards to that. But you can check out our show on carbontv.com. It's an app that you can download on your phone, on Apple TV, on Roku, on Fire Stick. It is like Netflix, but for hunting and fishing, and it's completely free. It's always on. We just launched episode 1 of season 3, and the podcast, wherever podcasts are found. And yeah, dude, brother Michael, thank you for having me on.
Dude, of course. Hopefully you enjoyed yourself. I had a great time. Like I said, I'd listen to that story again. Let's just keep going.
I love it. I love it. Well, brother, what's your next adventure you got going on?
Oh, I just drew a limited tag out of Colorado. So my adventure is basically I'm kicking my ass for the next 3 months to get into really good shape. And then I'm going on an elk hunt with it's the first time I'll be in a unit with under 1,000 other hunters. There's only gonna be 40 other people that have the tag. So wow. I'm pretty excited. I also have, for lack of another word, I have a mentor coming along with me. So I've always just been do it myself, figure it out. And I've struggled. I've never killed anything with my bow. So I'm hoping this year with a mentor coming along that, I'll have a great story to tell. So.
Yeah. Can I just leave you with one last thing before we wrap up?
Do. Yeah.
As an educator, what I know about levels of mastery is that in order to master a topic, like Malcolm Gladwell believes in the 10,000 hour rule. If you put in 10,000 hours of something, you become a master at that subject. In the education world, we're taught that in order to become a master, it requires you to be able to reteach it. And so when we are able to reteach our skills, that is when we actually deepen our understanding and knowledge of what we're doing. And so that is why I'm such a believer in the Mentorship as Conservation platform, because don't be like the person who dies and is buried with all their treasures. Yeah. Leave it for other people, leave it for the next generation. And I always say you can never outgive good. Continue to put that good out into the world, because you never know how it's going to boomerang, and you will end up getting fulfilled on your own right. But I just want to say that by teaching other people, you're actually going to deepen and sharpen yourself. So
I love that. I've said it before on the podcast, but my goal, I don't need to be the best hunter in the world. I just want to get as good as I can be, so that I can teach my children, because I didn't have anyone to teach me. So mentorship to my children has been a big part of my full plan as I continue this journey. But bringing other people along with me along the way is absolutely something that I'm super excited about. So
yeah, I love it. Thanks, Michael.
Even if I'm teaching them stupid things, right? But yeah, thank you, Johnny. I appreciate you, man. I'll let you get on with your day. And man, this was fun. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, guys, that's it. Another couple stories in the books. I want to thank Johnny, of course, for coming on the podcast. It was a ton of fun. The story did not disappoint. I know I'd heard it before, but I think it was even better the second time. Good enough that I'd be more than happy to hear it again a third time. So hope you guys enjoyed it as well. That being said, make sure you check out the show notes. I got links to all of the Soul Seeker Nation stuff down there, the podcast, the Linktree, the television show. Everything you need to know is right there. So that's it, guys. Thank you again for tuning in. I really do appreciate it. Johnny, of course, thank you again for scheduling some of your precious time to share some stories with us. And that's it, guys. Make sure, I guess, you get out there and follow all of us on Instagram. But more importantly, go out there and make some stories of your own. Thank you.